Good morning, afternoon, and evening, and welcome to Onshape Live 2023. We are thrilled that you've joined us. Today, we will be discussing reimagining your processes with Agile hardware development. My name is Maureen Carroll, and I am an Onshape Strategic Customer Success Manager. In my role, I become intimately familiar with our customers' goals and their usage of Onshape to not only achieve those goals, but to exceed them. Today, I'm joined by three Onshape customers who have incorporated agile processes into their hardware development with stellar results. Without further ado, I'll turn it over for introductions. Eric?
Hi, everyone. My name's Eric Polson. I'm a mechanical engineer and product architect at Autonomous Solutions Incorporated, and I also do some consulting. We are a team that automates vehicles for a variety of industries. We do haul trucks that haul hundreds of tons for mining industry. We do ag tractors, mowers, yard shifting trucks for logistics, quick install kits for automotive proving grounds.
Thank you, Eric. Jack?
Hi, my name is Jack Hudson. I'm the Specialty Engineering Manager at Syzygy Plasmonics. So Syzygy is a decarbonization company, and we make technology that carries out chemical reactions using electricity rather than combustion, as traditionally we carry out reactions such as ammonia decomposition and methane reforming to make clean hydrogen gas.
Excellent. Thank you, Jack. And last but not least, Ken?
Hello, my name is Ken Capozzi. I'm the Director of Engineering at Amphenol Fiber Optic Products. Amphenol is a large electronic company that makes components and assemblies for about every electronics market you could think of. Here at Fiber Optic Products, we make fiber optic connectors, cable assemblies, and enclosures for wireless infrastructure market, fiber to the premises, data centers, and medical devices.
Thank you, Ken. When we hear agile development, our minds may go to software development methodology. However, Onshape customers are proving that speed and rigor can coexist in hardware development. Hardware development teams are adopting agile development processes. Agile for hardware borrows key concepts from software development. Agile produces more speed and, as a result, more innovation, which is a key metric across the Onshape customer base. There are indeed challenges to applying agile methodology to hardware development. We're not going to have enough time today to jump into that discussion, but please see a great resource that's posted in the chat that addresses those challenges. And keep an eye out for a future Onshape Innovators Insider podcast related to this topic. Some logistics. Please use the live Q&A tab to ask questions throughout our time together today. Let's get started. As I've spent time chatting with each of our panelists on this topic and gained more insight about how Onshape is allowing them to be more agile, I was really excited to hear what each of them had to say. Jack, you talked about getting more of your org involved in the design process earlier and more often. Can you share with us how this has enabled your organization to be more agile?
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to share our 3D models with different parts of our organization using Onshape has been a huge contributor in the speed at which we operate. So a few examples, our IP lawyer giving people like that access to our 3D models. No one knows what needs to go into a patent more than the person that's actually drafting the patent. So rather than going back and forth with our team, being able to easily give them access where they can manipulate the 3D models actually makes it a lot quicker for them to select the images that they need to convey the options. The same thing with our scientists. A lot of times they need to draft project charters and grant applications for projects, and having them having the ability to also look at a project that we have in progress and share that information is paramount to moving swiftly and maintaining that agile development. As well as during fundraisers, we are a technology startup, and our fundraising team, our CEO, our CTO, them having the ability to quickly access information without even having to reach out to the rest of the design team is also proven to be a huge advantage.
Excellent. Those are all great examples. Thank you for sharing that. We saw earlier in John Herstick's keynote speech about waterfall and how there are so many starts and stops. It seems like by involving these non-traditional CAD roles into your processes, you're able to continuously innovate versus start and stops. Excellent. Thank you, Jack. Eric, you talked about your vision for branching. Can you share with the audience your approach to leveraging this Onshape feature?
Yeah, we use Onshape's release process with workflows. We use prototype and production releases. And in the past, we've done more of a sequential workflow where approvals have to happen sequentially by multiple people. If it gets rejected anywhere in the process, then we have to go back and fix it and start that process over again. But we're now starting to use a new process using branching and to do reviews and approvals. So we generate a branch in a product, and then each person that needs to review will get an assignment in the comments. That could be a peer reviewer or more than one. It could be customer representatives. It could be members from the electrical team, managers, anybody that needs to be involved with the reviews and approvals can have access to those comments, and they can review it, make their own comments. If it's a peer reviewer, and they can just fix a typo as opposed to just rejecting it and sending it back. So all of that can happen more rapidly. When the reviewer is happy, they can complete their assignment in the comments, and when the designer is happy with the state of all of the comments and has made the changes that need to be made, then they could submit the release candidate after it's already polished and refined. And that way it can sail through the release workflow without any rejections most of the time, and the issues have been addressed ahead of time. And we're working in 2-week sprints, and doing it the old way was often difficult to get things done in the sprint. We would roll stories over from one sprint to the next frequently, but this way it's allowing us to complete those and get a lot better completion on our tasks for each sprint.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can definitely hear how you're gaining that efficiency similarly to how Agile is applied to software development. So
yeah.
Thank you for sharing those examples. Ken, your focus was not so much on branching per se, but being faster and working with distributed teams. Can you talk about how your approach to keeping everyone on the same page while working at this faster pace has taken place?
Oh, sure. I have teams in the United States. I have R&D teams in China, in Vietnam, and in Mexico. And I encourage my design engineers to make a version at the end of every day and leave a note in the name of the version just about what sort of things they accomplished from the design perspective that day, so that when another team member, maybe on the other side of the world, is reviewing the model or picking that up to advance the model further, they have a very good idea of what changes were made since they saw it last and who was working on it, so they could reach out to that individual if need be for collaboration. So by making those versions, we're able to really just keep ourselves organized, have that line in the sand that we could always fall back on. It's a bit of a safety net, as well as it communicates, and it allows multiple engineers to work on the same design without fear of messing up the other engineer's intentions.
Absolutely. Yeah, we hear Greg Brown talk a lot about fearless CADing. That's one way that we see that. Excellent. Thank you so much. Daily versioning. That is very impressive. Talk about working quicker, right? Excellent. Well, let's chat a bit about simulation, the use of simulation in the design process. Eric, how do you currently use simulation today, and what is your vision for Onshape native simulation moving forward?
Yeah, at Autonomous Solutions, we design a lot of structural components to mount things on vehicles, like sensors and electronics and other components needed to automate a vehicle. And in the past, we haven't analyzed most of those designs for strength because it's faster to just over design them, make them extra strong. When we did FEA, it required making simplified models after the design was complete, and processing those in a separate application. It's time consuming, and it's late in the game when you do FEA that way. You're reluctant to go back and make changes because you're far down the road of the design. But we're just getting started trying Onshape simulation, and we're excited about it. It's allowing us to do analysis early in the design as the basic concept gets modeled, and get some early feedback as to how things are going to work and what changes need to be made. And it's exciting to see that capability and to start implementing that. It allows us to improve our intuition as if we can get feedback in the structural performance of things early in the process. And so that's great to see. And another way that we're using this that's unique is you can make publications that include the simulation results in the assembly, and then people with no CAD experience and outside the company can open that, can see the simulation results and manipulate the model. And we've even made configurable variables in the assembly that can change the loads in the simulation. So those are available in the publication as well, and outsiders, non-CAD users can change the loads and watch how that affects the simulation results. That's been an exciting thing to try.
Absolutely. And you can see the results in this achieving more agility for you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think just the fact that the FEA is embedded and you no longer have to move the models from one program to another to perform the analysis is going to just have us do far more simulations earlier on in the process. And I just see that the benefits to that are just kind of go without saying, that it's no longer a step that happens toward the end. It's something that is just kind of part of your development process.
Absolutely. And I'm hearing so many agile principle themes in this discussion. So we're in terms of applying agile to hardware development, I can definitely hear you talking about how that's happening day in and day out. Thank you. So let's chat a little bit more about your design cycle before Onshape versus once using Onshape. Ken, I think you talked about your product development model pre and post Onshape. What did your product development teams look like before and after?
Well, before we had Onshape, we had no PDM system at all. So all of the R&D activities were really siloed amongst the design teams that I mentioned previously. They would be the team to completely develop the product. They were doing all the modeling, all the analysis, and the 2D drawings, etc. Now, however, we can all collaborate on the design together because it just opens so cleanly. It doesn't matter where in the world your engineer is sitting. His access to the data is universal as long as he has a good internet connection. Whereas previously we had servers in certain places that were replicated, and that of course is a bit of a, requires a lot of IT infrastructure as well. So now we're not designing in silos, we're collaborating globally, which really, I think, optimizes your engineering horsepower and allows you to have all of your experts participating in one design. So the quality of the design and the speed of the design is improving. Access is just intuitive, and it never fails to open, and you never lose data. So that all of those things make collaboration much more possible as we work on our designs.
Absolutely. And I think I remember you had also kind of honed in on no longer, being bogged down by manual handoffs.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's not something that you need to do at all. It's you make a version, you see what you did that day, and it's not something that someone on the other side of the world that tries to open up the CAD and maybe has difficulties with it. And we just have a quick meeting and we talk about where the design is and where it needs to go over the next couple of days, and more than one group can accomplish that. It's also been extremely handy when we have these things that seem to surprise us every year, but they shouldn't, like Chinese New Year and the Tet holiday. We need to be able to apply other engineering teams so that the development work that's happening at those places doesn't get stalled. Likewise, our factory in China had to shut down for a week because of a COVID outbreak. And we saw that happen at a lot of places throughout the world, and especially in China. But we were able to keep the projects moving forward because we were able to have our other design teams who were unaffected be able to continue those projects and get them completed on time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another point that John Hirschtick hit on during his keynote speech, for anybody who missed it, was the pace of change, right? And many of us can identify with that, coming out of, a global pandemic, and what things changed in that pandemic that caused us to really have to rethink our ability to keep moving, right? Our customers are still expecting our products. How do we not slow that down? So thank you so much. Those were great examples, Ken. Jack, you mentioned pain points that existed prior to Onshape that have really been overcome with your use of Onshape. Can you speak to those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Our company is just turned 5 years old, so we're relatively young, and we've experienced a lot of growth since the inception of Onshape. So, one of the key things that's enabled it to be a little easier to grow is the flexibility that Onshape has, so that we can set up and change the way that we work as our needs change. When you're experiencing rapid growth, uh, you might have different requirements as we're growing and changing. So one of the major things is that like Ken had kind of touched on, is that having these things integrated into one piece of software, uh, you know, really decreases the amount of time that our engineers spend doing administrative things, like going from your PDM software to your CAD software and going through a different software for approvals. All things that in the past I've experienced to be very tedious and time sucking. So you, having it all under one roof, so to speak, is a huge advantage. And the same thing with the simulation. The easier something is to do, the more often it'll be done, and then the easier it is to incorporate into your existing workflow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did have one question come across in the Q&A tab. And maybe I'll pose the question. We can keep chatting a little bit to give you guys some time to think about it. The question was, have you seen reduction in waste alongside with becoming faster? So another aspect of Agile is you're wasting less, not only time, but in our case with hardware development, material, et cetera. So think about that a little bit, panelists. But while we're still on the topic of design cycle, Eric, I believe you talked about breaking out of an old mindset, enabling people, more people to be involved. Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen that happen more and more over the usage of Onshape?
Yeah, certainly. It's traditionally we do our design in more in sequence, where one person gets an assignment and they do the whole job on their own, and then they they have a design review where people get in a room. But with Onshape, it's much easier to do on the fly, so to speak. So we have multiple people working on the design. If somebody has a question or just wants to review it with someone, we can bring it up and work on it together, and in a Teams chat or just by a phone call, and have more people have the document open at the same time. And we've had times when in recent months where we were running out of time, had a customer needed something, and we just had to have additional people work on it. It's much easier to do that with Onshape than what we've had in the past. And we need to use that feature more. I think it's still sort of ingrained in us to go work on our little task and get that done and not ask for help. But Onshape allows us to change that and make that work better. And we're also able to get a lot more feedback early in the design cycle. We can share documents, and other people in the company, whether it's the sales team or the electrical team or any of those, we can just ask questions and they can jump in there and look and work on it together and get things done. It doesn't take any extra effort to generate files to send around to people and communicate that way. As another example, we have an outside support partner that's making parts books, and we can share our Onshape assembly, and they can get in and look at the bill of materials and get images of the parts and work on that even before the design is complete, and recognizing that updates will just happen and they can access those whenever they need to. And just like Jack talked about earlier, it's been great to work with patent attorneys. They're used to having to request things one at a time, when they need an illustration, but if they can get in and work with Onshape and generate their own illustrations, it's much more efficient.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for sure. One question I did see come across was, has anyone conducted mob or group development activities within Onshape and other tools that you may be using?
Yeah, we use Microsoft Teams at Autonomous Solutions, and we also use Jira and Confluence. So all of those things are useful. In Confluence, you can have documents or sort of informal documents where people can post pictures and questions, and in our sprint processes are handled using Jira, and you can, just like in Onshape comments, you can do on a user and it'll send them a notice and they can get on, and we can put links in the Jira cards to the Onshape documents and vice versa, and so those things integrate together really well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing the workforce, when we're gaining new members of our workforces, we're seeing that they're anticipating this ability to work real time like this. Ken and Jack, any other tools that you can think of that you're using in your organization that have that similar real-time collaboration?
We also use Teams, Microsoft Teams, to manage our projects. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, and one of you mentioned earlier about the comments, and I think that is something that we've talked about individually and as a group about, how the ability to comment within Onshape gets us closer to that mob type development.
Yeah, I also use Teams, and what I frequently do is during my team meetings, if we're developing something like that I'm having a meeting on specifically, we'll all be in there together in the assembly, and we can go over our task list and the remaining things that we need to do to complete the project. So again, with Teams and Onshape. So.
Absolutely. So back to the concept of reduction in waste. Is that something, I know that you've each hit on that a little bit. Is there anything in addition you'd want to touch on there in terms of improvements that you've seen in your organization in terms of waste reduction?
Well, I think just not having servers to maintain, and so the physical space, power consumption, and having to purchase these terabytes of data, and as well as have strong IT support to manage the whole system. With Onshape, all of those things are off the table. Someone who is not an IT person can administer the whole system. So I think the reduction of waste in terms of both the hardware and the human resources required to run a traditional PDM system versus Onshape is a tremendous reduction in waste in one way.
Absolutely. And we know the sustainability topic is really on the top of everybody's mind, and including reduction of footprint. Sorry, Eric, I think I interrupted you. Sorry about that.
I was just going to say that anything we can do to prototype early, even though it might be counterintuitive, because those prototypes are going to be thrown away, but it's less wasteful to throw away early prototypes than to throw away late prototypes. And so if we can use the Agile tools that we have available, including the ones in Onshape, to make prototypes and test them as early as possible, that's less wasteful overall.
Absolutely. And over to our QA moderator. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. I just want to make sure there's no questions that I'm missing. So I'm just taking a quick look there. One question we have is about design cycles. And I hate to put any of you on the spot, because I know it's sometimes it's not an exact calculation, but what would you say in terms of your design changes, how long design changes took before you inserted this agile methodology versus how it is now in terms of your design changes and how long they're taking? Anything that you haven't touched upon there that you might want to share for our audience?
I would say to quantify that a little bit, the number of changes we've made in the last 24 months that we've been using Onshape, as opposed to the previous year's data, we're doing probably about 40% fewer changes than we were previously.
Wow.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the development cycle and getting it right the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's one of the major that's one of the major principles is fail fast, right? Figure out quickly that you're on the wrong track. And with so many of our customers, in the concept and feasibility phase of design, that can be really imperative. I know that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not that we make fewer changes, it's that we make those changes before the consequences are higher. We make those changes early in the development process, and we have fewer, ECRs, but those changes happen before we get to that point, and we have a much faster way to get to a refined design.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just taking a look through again the Q&A tab to make sure I'm not missing anything. Eric, you mentioned the publication that you shared with an external non-Onshape user. What about feedback you're getting from your customers? What are your customers saying about their experience working with you when Onshape is involved?
Yeah, just this morning I had an on-site somebody at a customer site in Australia that we're trying to get some information from one of their mining haul trucks down there so we can change the design. And they are able to see the Onshape model that we've shared with them, and they could ask for more details. And they're new to Onshape, so they ask, can we get a model that has that shows in more detail what your concept is? And I was able to just go in and add a new tab to the publication and reply to his comment and say, okay, it's in there. You can see another assembly in that same document that he's already has access to. So I think most outside users don't really know what the power of this is until we point it out to them, and they're excited about shortening that communication cycle.
Excellent.
I found the internal rendering features, speaking of customer interfacing, we don't typically give our customers access to the system, but being able to create renderings of the models as they're in process, and then use those when you're doing your pitches and or if you're showing your customer some updates to the design that you're working on for them, it really gives it a polished feel and I think that it makes for a better PowerPoint. It doesn't take very long to apply some rendering. Again, it's built in. You don't have to leave the program. You just make a rendering tab, and in very short order, you can have a very close to photorealistic image to put into your presentations.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. So our time together today has been limited, obviously. We don't have enough time to talk about everything. One of the aspects that we won't have time to talk about today is a resource, 10 Agile Ideas Worth Sharing by MIT professor Stephen Eppinger. The link to that resource is in the chat, so please do check that out. It's a great resource around Agile. Over to our QA moderator. Do we have any questions for our panelists? All right, let's see. What makes Onshape distinguishable from other softwares in product development? And that's directed to our panelists.
For me, like, as I mentioned, the lack of IT infrastructure is really fantastic, and as Jack mentioned, having all of the tools under one roof and immediately available to you, not moving files around, having global access from any device, not having to install software on your computer or even have a special engineering computer, which I think most people in development are accustomed to. All of those are facets of typical development that are different, for the better, when you're using Onshape.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I agree with those points too. That I think people were skeptical when we started doing Onshape that cloud-based would be capable of doing all the things that we needed to do. But I think that our teams are seeing those benefits, and everybody is sort of glad we made the change. Yeah,
I also think that, funny enough, that it's extremely useful for non-CAD users in our organization. And the ability that we have to provide them access if they need it, and that goes for not necessarily our customers, but other organizations that we work with, whether it's a third-party vendor or just someone who doesn't traditionally use CAD, like the supply chain teams that we have. Being able to work with them so easily using Onshape as compared to other softwares that I've used in the past.
Absolutely. Another question from the QA tab. Has anyone tried peer design or co-pilot design with Onshape?
So we've done that, not formally so much, but there's been a few circumstances where we had a short design deadline, or just there was questions by a relatively new engineer, and so we've done that a little bit, and we need to do more. I think it's not something that we are used to doing, and so it's just a matter of reminding everybody on the design team that it's not taboo to bug somebody and have them jump in and help you, and so it's a good capability.
Absolutely. Another question that we had: any experience? Have any of you or your organizations had experience at this point with PCB or ECAD Agile?
I'm very familiar with PCBs. We don't produce them or design them in this division, but based on my knowledge, it would be a perfectly adequate, if not advantageous, software to design a circuit board in Onshape.
Absolutely. PCB Studio. Maybe we'll talk about expanding into those areas that are focused on that. Do you have any other examples of using Onshape with your supply chain, whether as guest enterprise users or otherwise? So we touched upon a little bit the concept of working with external, but do you have any other examples of using Onshape with your supply chain?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got some examples. Being a relatively new company, we've had to develop our supply chain as we grow. So there was a point at which we're trying to migrate all of the data, like bill of materials, things like that, into a supply chain system. And again, giving them access to those, to the assemblies, the models, the bills of materials, it is all great because it's a good starting point for that has all the information that they don't necessarily need help from our team to pull that stuff. Depending on how meticulous you've been in documenting, but the ability is there to have all that information, and it's something that I've used a lot is to fill out the properties of the parts with the information that we would need, and then supply chain can take it from there and take all that information that's already pre-existing from something that maybe wasn't designed to have that functionality, but as it so happens, since it's all under that one roof, it's there for them. So it's been a huge help in that sense.
Great. And within that helpfulness, what would you say the toughest challenge has been about getting the suppliers to collaborate with your data, if any?
Well, let's see. It's kind of like we touched on that. The more pieces of software that need to be involved with each other, the more complicated it typically gets, and that's been a major source of difficulty. No one wants to be able to, or no one wants to have to, do manual data entry for a large number of things. I will say that, again, if you've done a good job of compiling all that data as you went along in the design process, I found it to be a much smoother transition. You can export data directly from Onshape into an Excel file, and then share that with almost any other software.
Okay. Ken or Eric, anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, we use Onshape mostly with our internal production team. As the company grows, we're going more to external suppliers and contract manufacturers, but it's been really helpful for them to be able to access things directly. And on the question about our toughest challenge, I think one of the challenges is that information is too easy to access, and there's too much of it in some ways. So, for example, we have our internal purchasing teams can be confused about which versions they're in the document are the correct ones, because we as a mechanical team haven't been very consistent about naming things and presenting the data in a consistent way. And so one of the things that we're moving forward with is using publications more. So instead of sharing an Onshape document that has all of the messy history in it, we can share a publication that only shows the released versions and only shows the tabs that we want people to see, and that way we can clean that up and make that easier for them to figure out what they're looking at.
Excellent. And for anybody in the audience who is piqued by what Eric is talking about right now, Publications is a newer delivered capability of Onshape. If you're not yet familiar with Publications, please head into the Learning Center and educate yourself, and let your Onshape point of contact know if you have any questions on applying it. Any thoughts on best practice to share surfacing or covers designs with SolidWorks users? So many of our customers, you may be in a situation where you have more than one CAD solution currently running. So this is around best practices for when you're trying to share surfacing or cover designs with SolidWorks users. If not, that's okay.
No,
Yeah,
haven't done
that's
anything with that.
okay. No worries. The beauty of a panel discussion, we kind of see what comes through and we address it. All right. So one other thing that it sounds like our Q&A session is coming to a close. I think we got some great questions. If there are any questions that we didn't get to today, then we certainly will make sure that we get those answered for you and get out to you. Today's been a great resource for our customer base. We do have another event coming up that's going to be coming up in May. This is PTC LiveWorks, and this will be happening May 15th through the 18th in the Boston Convention Center and Exhibition Hall. And you can head to Onshape, to LiveWorks to register for that. We are running a promotion. So the first 100 participants today from Onshape that register will be comped admission. So please make sure you take advantage of that. And there's a lot more information about LiveWorks on the web that you can read about. So hopefully you'll be able to join us there. It's a phenomenal opportunity to learn more about the overall PTC offerings, including Onshape. And in closing, to stay competitive, teams need to get to market faster with products that they know customers will love. And Agile hardware product development can help your team do just that. Our customers are living the principles of Agile in the design of their products in Onshape. Onshape users are the pioneers of hardware product Agile development, and they are definitely experiencing competitive advantages in their marketplaces. We hear this in our conversations with customers day in and day out. So I really did want to thank you for joining our session today. And I want to give a special thanks to Eric and Jack and Ken for engaging in this panel discussion. And again, any questions that we didn't get to answer, we'll make sure we get those answered. And I just really hope that you enjoy the rest of Onshape Live 2023. Thank you so much.